next 25 minutes, I'm going to be talking about engineer-led security and taking an engineering group to secure by default and secure by design, and how that helped bring engineering to a place of trust, delivery, and security. I'm Abel. I've been a coder, an engineer, a consultant. I've made a lot of mistakes, and hopefully I've learned a couple of things on the way. I've already said I work at Pleo. So this is a story from a previous job that I'm excited to tell. It covers a time when I fell into some really interesting work. I look around today, and we'll find out in a minute what you think, but when I see what's going on in security, it's still a problem that needs to be solved. We still need good enough security. The threats are always increasing, and we need to solve those problems with the people we have. We don't have the money to go out to market to hire 30 security experts. We need to find our engineers, our product people, inspire them to build the security we need. So, a point of safety. I have a strong interest in security. I'm not an expert. This talk doesn't suppose anyone here is a security expert. It supposes we want to solve the problems in front of us, the security challenge that we face, and become getting things done well experts. So let's do a sight test. I'd like to get everyone in the room to put a hand up. Any hand, left or right. So to raise your hand. Brilliant, thank you. You're all awake. That's fabulous. Right, put your hands down. So, if you worry about a bad actor penetrating your system, put your hand up. And now keep those up. Keep it up. Who worries about an official body issuing fines or taking away your license to operate? Now want to see all the hands. And then, who worries about their engineering teams may not be able to control those risks? Yeah, I think we've got almost everyone there. Yeah, these are reasonable worries. You should be worried. People out there should also be worried. There's been scary stories in the news recently. The Co-op, Marks & Spencer's, if you're not from the UK, they're major UK supermarkets, big brands, were hacked and had major operational issues in 2025. They couldn't get food onto shelves. That's the severe of the hack, and apologies to the Co-op people who are here, sorry. But sometimes it's more subtle, but still super bad. Booking.com had a major phishing threat warning issued by a government department telling people to be really careful when they book hotels through Booking. DoorDash not only had a major breach that leaked credit card data last year, in a trial this year, it was revealed that there was a $2.5 million driver scam. Their security was not good. People could do things with their system that they weren't meant to do to the level of £2.5 million. So maybe stories like that brought you here today, and I can talk about how we solve those. And that's the promise of this talk. I'm going to share with you how I tackled this challenge at a previous place of work with a small team of engineers. And I'll tell you how this small team explored, solved, and then scaled the security solution, and how you can do similar. So let me set the scene and tell you about TES Global. So TES Global is unusual, that it's a company that's more than 100 years old. It originated as a newspaper supplement for schools. As you can see there, black and white newspapers, a bit old. It developed into a publishing company, and it's now a digital products company for teachers in schools. And how did it get there? In 2015, engineering IT started afresh and acted like a startup bubble inside this old company and beginning a modern database approach to providing school products. And how did that look inside? Engineering in TES Global consists of 50 remote engineers, designers, product managers, working in product-focused autonomous teams. The teams are optimized for flow, as we like these days. The teams built, shipped, and owned what they built in production, monitoring, fixing. They release when they're ready. There was no permission, no external gating. They got things done. They were good at making trade-offs to get to market and find product market fit in this startup world. This supported innovation was really valued. The model worked, but being successful, suddenly become a digital products company, brought new problems that a publisher didn't have before. Success had made TES visible as a place that had data that could be useful to people who like stealing people's data. More of a target. And global cyber threats were increasing. Government's requirements were increasing. GDPR was just sliding on in there. And the technology we were building was becoming more complex. There was a race going on, and we were losing. Let me tell you a story of the data we collected. So I worked in the job application section. So we shifted from moving PDF documents about between applicants and schools through job adverts to making it really easy to apply for a job and making it really easy to find someone a job. So we got all their data, and applying for a job as a teacher, you don't just drop your CV, you've got to tell people your criminal record, your religion, your favorite bus stop, your criminal, all these details that could, if you held that on a quarter of the teachers in the UK, it could cause great harm. So I built that software, and I reflected and thought, I've not made a mistake exactly, but maybe I'm opening up the company to more risk than I'm managing. So I pivoted and started looking, well, how do we fix this? And I found out the company was already aware of this risk, which is refreshing, and they were seeking external advice to place controls. But this generated another threat. I've told you about our empowered product teams and how they were great at delivering. Our operational velocity, our ability to deliver value, was threatened by the likely business approach to handle this external threat. Latent cycle checking, formal gatekeeping. That increases their friction. When we're delivering, honestly, our best engineers would probably quit. That's not what they were here for. They were here to get things done. So engineering needed a way to deliver value safely in this new world. And I thought, that's probably my job. So as a staff engineer, I could see the threats coming. I wanted to work it out because I loved how we engineered. That's why I was there. I needed to find a way to get consistent and good security that respected the drive to ship, and it should not slow down the teams without the reason being clear and important. And the shape of the solution shouldn't create new silos or make someone become the police. I thought the problem could be solved by engineering, that we could solve it ourselves, placing security demands where the work happens and supporting our product team's needs. Why did I think that? So back in 2025, Sharon Litz did a talk. She's a security industry leader, a founder of the DevSecOps movement. That's a movement to unsilo security work and embed it into delivery. Shannon said teaching a security person how modern software delivery works takes a lot longer than teaching a developer how to understand to make security happen. And I was very lucky to be at this talk because it was like a light bulb. It's like, I can do this. So how could I make this happen in my teams, in my workplace? I pitched an idea to my head of engineering, Marco, and I said, I want to have a team with me to hold that challenge, provide a security platform, and assist teams in taking the right security actions. He liked it, we worked on it together, and his key suggestion was we should own the authorization and authentication stack to keep connection with what it's like to operate one of the most secure parts of the company. And we can dog food, drink our own champagne, the problems and solutions that come up. And he said, proof of concept, 6 months, see how it goes. And then we started an engineering security team, seconding 2 engineers from the existing teams to help me. So, spoilers, it worked. Hurrah! The end? No. It's not a 10-minute talk. It's 25 minutes. Let's dig into that.
If you're enjoying this, Lead Dev's got loads more to offer.
I have written some blog posts for the website in the past. I know the recordings from all the conferences are up there. You should definitely check it out.
Lead Dev can offer you a variety of things, from blogs, webinars, panels, Slack community which is super supportive.
So make sure you check out leaddev.com.
So let's talk about what we did. There are a few things we need for success. We need people. Just talked about them. We'll come back to them. We need a plan, a recipe to get there, and maybe some useful technology. Let's walk through that. People. Tom and George joined me from one of the teams at TES. They formed the initial team, and they aced it. It was brilliant. And after that 6-month initial proof of concept, I was asked to hire 2 permanent engineers to make the team a permanent fixture at TES. In came Emily and Charlotte as permanent team members. And I made this clear. I'm showing these people, 1, they're fabulous, and they made this thing happen, and 2, they were just talented engineers. None of them were security experts. And that reason should become apparent when I show you the success we had doing it. So real-world planning is not simple. We have to discover the work while doing it, learning on the move, looking for the next option. It's very hard to explain that in the time we have, so I'm going to show you a bit simplified story of some of the most important things we did. So here's a simplified thread from that knitted wool blob, highlighting the value in having a platform and education at the heart of bringing security into teams. We start with charging the team we've talked about, and we're going to run through discovery, raising knowledge, a paved path, and layered controls. Let me walk you through those key steps. So we knew our North Star, placing security at the heart of what our engineers did. But if this team and initiative was not to fail, we needed a clear direction and a first base camp. We needed to do something. Otherwise, the proof of concept would fail. And we needed to know what was important for everyone. Just like in the previous talk, we needed buy-in. We needed to ask the people what they needed and solve their problems. So when we disrupted how work happened, people said, yes, this is right. We should do this. So we ran 4 workshops, inviting our experts, people involved, people impacted, asking key questions from internal and external security, compliance, and process. There was weeks in preparation, hours of meetings. There's too much to unpack in this talk, but I've written this up. There'll be a link at the end that takes you through how I ran these workshops and what I got from them. But the key thing is making sure we got buy-in from our stakeholders, making sure we knew the right questions to ask. And it was worth it. We found strong agreement. We got direction. We were able to form a stakeholder group to help us stay on the straight and narrow. And we managed a risk register which said what are the biggest problems and what we're going to do about them. And that fueled our team. So as a team, we might think maybe we can police the problems or fix leaky buckets. But that's not what it was about. We wanted security to happen when we were not there. That was our key aim. We need to move to a secure by default engineering process. And that was our key big goal. Give information, provide a path forward, support and work with the teams towards trust. And how I like to see this is we wanted to provide a rising tide that raised every boat so every team could do security better. How did we do this? First, we brought in external training for all engineers. We knew from engineer self-assessments that people rated themselves low for security. That was really handy, because then we could use it as evidence to get the budget to get the training. Once we'd done the training for everyone, we looked to our internal experts on external security and compliance, and then said, tell us everything you know, everything we should know. And they talked to the engineering security team, and we boiled those points down to the key points we thought would help the teams right now, and then worked with them to showcase that to the teams. And then we talked about risk and consequences. I found that as a company, we had a culture when we had a security incident, I don't know if it's a mixture of embarrassment or basically that we shouldn't talk about it, it was never shared. So though our IT department knew we were under threat, our engineers didn't know. And I changed that culture and got them to encourage them to say, talk about the things that happened, talk about when someone tries to attack us, tell engineers this happened. So we backed it up with stories. And I found that sometimes scary stories are really useful to motivate if they're honestly told. And I think that's really important to not hide away what's happening to our engineers. So how do we scale this support to our teams? We gave our engineers a paved path to control these risks, a new way of working and thinking about security. We present it through a guide with large, friendly words on the cover. So meet Stan. Oh, thank you, Stan. This is our secure engineering standard, a curated guide to building secure enough products. The Stan's job was to guide our engineers through security in their own delivery to understand security threats, solutions, and how to work in this risky world we found ourselves in. It had 3 sections to help engineers think about security, and I think this is the meat. This was the change that happened. By doing this, we gave our engineers the ability to navigate without us being there. So what were those 3 sections? First, we helped our engineers think about risk, how much they needed to do to manage to be secure by default. And we built this talking to engineers and stakeholders, understanding what was needed. And then the Stan is clear about the risks that need to be managed. It gives engineers a set of directives to be followed, quite like the highway code of shoulds and musts, things they need to do. This is all contributed by a load of people. Compliance, risk, security, infrastructure, and engineering all help us build this. But telling people the risks they need to avoid, and they should do this, they must do that, isn't enough. The stand had a third section which documented the practices to manage risks, our paved path. It lowered friction for our teams to solve problems by making the needed practices clear and available. Every directive must have a practice linked. Engineers can go, I must do this, to I have done this, quickly, smoothly, and predictably, and even better, the same in each of our code bases. So the first version of the stand was very much a baseline of quality, the default quality we needed everywhere. It was a lot based on things like the OWASP Top 10, which is a consensus of the top 10 web security risks in the world right now. So what did this do? It set a clear, achievable goal to each of our teams, introduced new concepts and technologies, and gave us a vocabulary when we were solving a problem together. We knew what we were talking about. And it grew independence. Teams could solve their own problems. They could read some docs. They could use the tools. And it leveled expectation across the teams. Was that enough? Not quite. We need to know, were we having an effect? We borrowed a rule, trust, but verify. We want to put measuring in place. Now, we can't get into people's heads and see what they're thinking about security. And it's very hard when you look at a code base to go, is that secure? But there are things we can measure. So we focus on the things that we can measure quickly, but also valuable. We looked at third-party libraries, software versions, known vulnerabilities. We told teams how they were doing. We reported to the head of IT and engineering. And that gave us a measure of impact. It was useful because vulnerability management is super critical. And we could see that it improved. And we could guess that people were thinking more about security. They were valuing it more. And when they were not, we could find out what's going on in the team. If they weren't keeping up their vulnerability management, they probably weren't thinking about other security things. A really quick, easy measure. So all teams had a secure by default paved path. Security had been shifted left. We were safe from the most usual threats. But this default only covered the basics. There were other higher risk areas and not enough. So let me tell you how we solved that. So as I said, some of our teams had complex data needs, like the story at the start of the teachers and their religion, criminal records. We needed to sort that out. The risk went beyond what our default paved path could secure. But if we raised our standard expectations too high, we'd be making demands of every team when they didn't need to. We'd be making development, delivery more expensive. We'd lose our hearts and minds. We'd lose our buy-in. We'd do too much. We're making security the only thing that was important, where security is always a trade-off. So instead, we chose to be selective and help teams choose their good default. We raised the tide of all our engineering standard. Now we have to put energy in building a lock where we can focus on raising certain product teams to a higher standard. So we asked our teams to grade the risk category of the data they held. I worked with compliance to work out what are our categories, into 3 categories. Everything should be secure, high-risk data, or, oh my God, special category stuff. We didn't want to hold the special category stuff that's expensive. We knew we had a higher standard for the higher-risk stuff, and we'd already talked about how everything should be secure. So we collaborate with teams, including ourselves. We dog food the stuff, and we experimented, and then we extended the stand to cover a high-risk offering. So now we had 2 paved paths, expecting secure design, mature data management, and protection of credentials. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I actually want to turn this around and start talking about how you can do this. So we carried on doing, we iterated, we avoided siloing, we kept building connections and guiding and automating. Just to be clear, silos are always unhelpful. They cause blockages of the flow of value in building software. And so we had some rules. Our rules were always build connection, guide, don't police. We shouldn't be the police, we should be guiding people to the right answers. And we should use the breaks as a last resort. There was, I think, one time we talked to a team, we thought they understood what they needed to do, and we could clearly see they weren't going in that direction. And we gave them advice again, and then I think when they shipped it, me and the operations manager looked at ourselves and said, that's going off. In 2.5 years, there's one time we had to be the police. So it is important that you can use the breaks, but only when it's critical. So let's talk about impact before we talk about how you can do this. Thank you for your attention so far. I'm sure lunch is calling. A summary of the success at scale would be teams made better choices. They prioritized security outcomes much better. The estate got smaller, things got turned off, things got removed, less flabby. If you couldn't patch it, maybe you should kill it. And more secure in many ways. I've got a few richer angles for you. Back when I was in military work, I did a presentation and interviewed several folk who were impacted by this work. I don't have time to show those videos today, but I've pulled out a few quotes. So when we started, operations were the default security because it always rolls downhill to operations, right? They were frustrated. And that changed in 2 years, and the quote was, it changed a lot of mindsets and moved from security being an afterthought. Operations were happy. The risk team was isolated. I didn't even know there was an external risk team when I was engineering to start with. They were disconnected from engineering. When asked risk, they said it's brought the most valuable assets engineering has into security. And when we started, engineering didn't have the tools. They didn't know what was expected. And I asked one of our senior engineers, and she said, everyone knows where to go. Engineers are empowered to use security and design in everyday work. We also gained a load of things we didn't expect, didn't plan for. I'll fly through these. The authentication app occasionally, turns out, placed the user's password in a cookie. We found that, we fixed it. We played hacker games together, the cross-site scripting game that Google offers. The next day we played that game, people started patching holes. As soon as they made them think like hackers, they thought like hackers and fixed the code. Higher-risk data was moved to safer stores. It wasn't blended in with the lower-risk data. Sensitive data got encrypted in places where it was available in clear text. Standardized security meant when we were attacked, we knew how to make our services work in conjunction to get rid of that risk, that attack. And my favorite story, one day my boss, the head of engineering, came down and says, the board's not happy with what you're doing in security. And it's like, oh no, that's not what I want to hear. Said, so what's going on? He said, the reports, they're unreadable. And I went, the board is reading my security report? And he was like, I made it. I've got security, engineering security all the way to the top of the business. And that's the best measure I could have. And then we replanned our sprint and produced reports for the board. So let's come to a close. A couple of minutes to tell you how you can explore this journey for yourself. Security threats are only going to increase. They're not going to go away. They're going to get worse. Engineering gets optimized for purposes when you give them a purpose. And there is so much to do in so little time. The ocean is huge, boats are small. Given these constraints, what can we do? Rather than trying to build the fastest police boat you can to drive around those boats and tell them what to do, you cannot be in all the right places. Build a rising tide, raise all your boats. Transform engineering to take that strain. How do you do that? How do you start? Begin with a team with the big goal of improving your software security without becoming a silo. Ensure they are connected to wisdom, our experts, and the problem at hand. Together, work out what will begin to move the needle. You've only got buy-in to take this thing on for a certain period of time. Take that buy-in and sweat the asset. Find out what you're going to do together to solve the business problem. Bring everyone along. You cannot go faster than your teams can go. It's not possible. You think you can. Maybe in the short term you can. But focus on building the community. Thank you. I'm going to be there for QAs later, but there's several deep dives and blogs and references and lots of lovely stuff on that QR code and that link. Thank you very much.